Success Insight shares the stories of the people with passion and drive who make things happen in the world. Here's your host, Howard Fox.
Hello, everybody. This is Howard Fox, and welcome to another episode of the Success Insight podcast. Our guest today is Philip Gafka. Phil is a business coach, speaker, and founder and principal of Leap Coaching, leadership for entrepreneurs and professionals. Phil brings over 40 years of real-world success in business, leadership, development, and executive coaching to his clients. Phil's clients are business owners, executives, professionals, and entrepreneurs whose goals are to develop their individual and business potential into measurable, sustainable, elevated performance. We've invited Phil to the Success Insight podcast today to chat about his new book, Hole-in-One Leadership, 9 proven steps guaranteed to get you extraordinary results. Phil, welcome to the Success Insight podcast.
Thank you, Howard. Glad to be here.
So, Phil, once again, congratulations on the publishing of your book. That is for some of us, that's a major milestone, and definitely want to provide you a heartfelt congratulations and kind of hear all about it. And before we do that, I'd love just to get a little bit more of a background, because we kind of alluded to 40-some years of real-world experience, and share with our listeners a little bit about what that experience is in business and leadership development.
Sure. Thank you, Howard. Started off actually a 30-year plus career in the appliance distribution business. It was the high-end residential side. So we distributed as a wholesaler products like Sub-Zero, Viking Range, Thermador, Gaggenau, a lot of the high-end toys for the kitchen.
Right.
And started off in sales, worked my way up, and actually was the CEO of 2 different companies in that industry. So learned sales, learned management, and learned leadership. And I think the advantage of all those years in that industry is we called on other businesses. So you start to see the real common denominators of why well-run businesses are well-run and why many others are not. And that helps me now in my coaching business. Been on my own for the last 12 years now. And it's relatively easy to go into a prospect or a new client. And in a very short period of time, you can spot if those good foundational elements are in place or not.
Well, Phil, what are some of those good foundational elements?
Well, it boils down to the top 2, Howard. One is the culture of an organization. Now, there's 2 strong points, and I do kind of make a lead with this in the book. One is the vision for your organization. Where are you trying to go? What do you aspire to be? The more important point, though, is the culture of how are you going to get there? And you can say all kinds of things, like we value our people, they're our biggest asset. But it's not what you say, it's what you do. And you can walk through an organization, and a lot of times I'm escorted through by the boss or the owner, and you get a real quick reading on whether these people are engaged at this business or whether they're just there. If they're engaged, they're able to look the boss or the owner right in the eye. There's a relationship, there's communication, and you can just get the feeling that these people, you have a real grasp of what they're here for, how their efforts play into the success of the company. And they've found a place that their personal culture fits their work environment.
Phil, when you're in the companies and you're working with the organization as a whole, like you just said, you've got the leader walking you through the building, wherever it might be, whether it's manufacturing, service, etc. When you have the employee engaging, I mean, they're either describing, here's what I do, my process, and they're really having that discussion, versus the owner or the senior level executive really being kind of guarded through that tour. What would you say about the latter of those 2, that type of organization, compared to the one where the leader is comfortable with who he or she is, the team that are on the receiving end of that little tour, they're comfortable and sharing, and they're not afraid to look you in the eye and talk about, here's what I do, here's why I do it. What's the difference between those 2 types of organizations?
I think it boils down to whether they're going to be successful or not. If you don't have all of your people rowing with you in the same direction at the same time, it's highly unlikely you're going to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. That latter description of those people that are not engaged, those are the ones that tend to have revolving doors as far as their personnel goes. And they also are the ones that can set all kinds of sales goals, but rarely make them because they don't have the hearts of and the efforts of their people working with them to achieve things. The big thing is the results. That's what I think, good leaders in their own way, however that is, get results.
Right. What do you see as I don't know, maybe it's the straw that broke the camel's back, that sense of urgency the fact that they've asked you to come into the organization, it means somebody in the organization acknowledges that we needed help. And whether it's you or some other highly qualified executive coach, leadership coach, business coach, but they realized they needed help and they brought somebody like you in. What is the kind of what does that sense of urgency kind of look like as you're coming into that organization?
It has a lot of different faces. Here's one thing that you don't hear or I don't hear. I don't have an initial conversation and the owner says, hey, I have a leadership deficiency in my company. They're never able to identify that. What they do identify is lack of sales, missing targets, culture where people just don't interact well, and there's always tension in the office. So there's just things going on. They know it's not right. They maybe can't even put a good handle on it, but they know it's not right, and they're finally tired of it, and they have not been able to figure out how to make it better.
Okay. And given this experience, and I've no doubt you have a lot of stories that you can tell, and in fact, in your book, Hole-in-One Leadership, 9 Proven Steps Guaranteed to Get You Extraordinary Results. What I loved about the book is there are stories throughout the book and in each chapter. And that's refreshing because you're providing the anonymity is there, but you're providing real world examples of the points you're trying to cover. And you've had this experience doing the work, the leadership coaching, the business development inside these organizations. How did you begin to contemplate, I want to write a book. I think I've got enough material, enough insight into what's going on. I can see patterns. The metaphor of bringing golf into the conversation, I think, is extremely interesting, and I'll share in a minute why. But how did you start to contemplate the writing of this book?
Well, it actually was an idea that got planted with me over time by other people. As I would talk with people and explain what I do or relate a client situation, they'd make comments like, you really know what you're talking about. Why don't you write a book? And so it was never an original idea of mine. It's just that I heard it enough time from people that I worked with or networked with that finally that seed kind of took root. And I started putting together notes. Now, I'm not going to tell you how old those notes are.
Right.
Because it did take a long period of time. That's only because I decided at one point to get serious about it. And that's when I did what I expect of clients is I was having trouble motivating myself to really sit down. I can talk all day long, but to sit down and write for me is a different challenge. So I hired someone to coach me through the process of writing my book, someone who knew about it, who could take me through and lead me down that path. And so when it was time to get serious, I figured out, let's do this the right way. And I know coaching works. It works for my clients, so I did it for me.
Fantastic. And what was the duration of the process of writing the book? So you've taken the notes over the years. Somehow you've cataloged them, categorized them, organized them, et cetera, et cetera. What was from a start to finish, how long a process was this for you?
About 9 months. It could have been faster had I totally devoted myself to that project, but it was in between work, coaching clients, and that's doing business development. So it wasn't where I just stopped everything to write the book. So it's about a 9-month process.
Okay. So I was going to share with you, Phil, is I had a podcast earlier this morning, and my guest had a set of golf clubs way back behind his shoulder. And towards the end, I had asked them, given your years of experience, and it's not unlike yours, in his case, perhaps a little bit less, 25 years, but that's significant. And I asked them, you have those golf clubs behind your shoulder there. What does the game of golf say to you about leadership? And I think he was, one, surprised at the question, but I think his answer was very poignant. And I think you've kind of stated it throughout your book. It's part of it is just keeping a level head and knowing when to play it safe or knowing when to take a chance. And so I love the metaphor of the golf and leadership. And how did you kind of put a lens on the golf game as a way to tell your story about leadership? Where did that come from?
Well, when I was just finishing college and I had to take some gym class for fulfillment of my degree, and I took a golf class. I really never had played previously. And it was pretty fortunate because I took a job within a month of graduating in sales and realized this industry plays golf.
Yes, they do.
So I've been playing golf for over 40 years now. And as I've gone along to learn how to not just swing the club, but how to play the game, there are so many nuances of that game that to me line up directly with leadership. And that's kind of why I went that way with the book. Besides, I like the game of golf and I like leadership and its challenges. There's just so many parallels to me that just make perfect sense. One of the chapters in the book, I state that it's a very individual game. And golf is the only game that there's no ref, no linesman, no ump. It's the only game you call fouls on yourself. It's kind of holding yourself accountable in leadership. You know when you're supposed to do the right thing, and you know if you have or you haven't. And that's part of that overall structure of being a leader. It's not doing the right things when everybody's looking. It's doing the right things.
And what are some of the other nuances that you would apply between the game of golf and leadership, in addition to, like you say, it's a solitary game. You have to hold yourself accountable. It's doing the right thing, even when nobody's looking. What are some of those other nuances, though?
I think another strong one is if you're playing on the PGA Tour, you have a limit of 14 clubs in your bag. And so they're your clubs. How you use them is kind of like your leadership skills and abilities. You don't have to have 30 clubs. You need to know how to use the clubs you have. You need to know how to use the skills and abilities that you have to be the best leader that you can be. Some of the best leaders that I've encountered along the way, they were nothing more than the best version of themselves. They weren't all the best orators. They were not all the best visionaries. They were not all the best anything. But they know how to use what they have, like the clubs in your bag.
Very good. And what can you share in terms of the journey some of your clients are taking or have taken with you? And again, using some of those nuanced comparisons between leadership and golf, what are some other examples that you can share with us about the journey one of your clients has taken from here's the issue I had, and this is how I overcame it?
Some are straightforward and cut and dried. Others are more of a journey. And that's kind of one of the other points of the book. It's practice. You can look at a situation, you can talk about a situation. The only way to make it better is go practice whatever that challenge is. If it's having difficult conversations, if it's getting clarity in your own head of where you want to lead your organization. So a lot of it is really daily implementation of the things that you need to do. Just like when I read about these PGA professionals, they'll finish their 18 holes and they'll go to the range and hit for a couple of hours till they get that one shot just right. Same thing for leadership. Until you get it right, and you only got it right for that one situation, because the next situation is going to be just a little bit different. But going out there and practicing and having the confidence that as a leader, you don't have to have all the answers. You just have to know that you can get to the answer. That's one of the foundations of the book too, Howard, is that a lot of times people confuse management and leadership. And to me, they're two different disciplines. You manage process and you lead people. And a manager, sometimes what I've seen thinks they have to have all the answers because they have the manager title. Good leaders only know that they need to find the answer. It doesn't have to be theirs. They don't have to have credit for all of them. They use the brain power and the observation skills of the people they work with. So they're more concerned with the result than the credit.
Very interesting. And who was it that said the difference between management and leadership? It was Peter Drucker, right?
Yep.
Okay. And that was back in the vault, and I knew that.
You played this game.
What do you see today with the new leaders today? I mean, there's so much has been written over the last number of years about the millennials. They're this, they're that, they're not this, they're not that. And now, heaven forbid, there's a whole new cadre of post-millennials, whatever they're called, in the marketplace, in the workplace. Do you see the role of the manager, the leader, what it takes to succeed? Is it changing because the demographics are changing, or is it they're still going to have to know to do the same things, learn how to develop their skills, develop their capabilities and practice, etc., but also know when it's appropriate to manage versus when it's appropriate to lead? Is that changing any, or is it still the same?
I'll give you a economist answer: yes and no.
You're a good coach, Phil. I can tell.
The basics don't change. I think for good leadership, the thing that you have to look about leadership, it's always evolving. If you go back 10,000 years when we were hunter-gatherers, I'm going to guarantee you leadership at that point was way different than it is today. If you go back a little over 100 years ago, I think GM started in something like 1908. Back in 1908, women didn't vote. Today, a woman heads up GM. What you're encountering now with the millennials, and the generation right behind them is Generation Z, but this is the first time we've had to balance 5 generations in a workforce.
Right.
And so that's really the bigger challenge. It's not just the millennials. I think where the millennials become a bit of a challenge is you had about 80 million baby boomers. Then you had 40 million Generation X. Now you've got 80 million Generation Y or millennials, and they know they have the numbers. It's kind of like Generation X went along with more of the boomer train of thought. They were outnumbered 2-1. The millennials know they are a 1-to-1 ratio. And the challenge is not that they're just mislabeled, but the reason they're mislabeled is they have a different value structure. Baby boomers refer to millennials as job hoppers. Actually, baby boomers were the first job hoppers. As the economy grew, there were so many different opportunities. They hopped around from job to job.
Sure.
But millennials get tagged with they're not loyal, they don't stick around. But look what happened when millennials were being raised. Divorce was at an all-time high. So maybe their parents or maybe a friend's parents were going through a divorce. So there's one little lesson. What'd you learn about loyalty? When they were kids, it was also a time of great corporate downsizing. So, mom and dad or one or the other had good jobs and just got promotion. All of a sudden, their job got outsourced to some other country. So what did they learn about loyalty? Baby boomers and my parents, you could work for a company, get the gold watch and the pension and be done. There's no pensions any longer. Companies don't have loyalty. So why do we expect millennials to be loyal when what they've grown up with is the baseline learning of, hey, take care of yourself because nobody else is?
It seems to me that the baby boomers, of which I am the very tail end of that demographic, is having to learn to adapt to the newer generations that are in the workplace because they can't continue to say or be upset because they're not like you. They don't necessarily have the same mindset or values. But it also seems that the millennials and even the group that's after them also need to perhaps understand the nature of learning is not just, okay, I take a class and at the end of the month, I should be now a senior level executive in the company, because there's still that misconception.
Yes, without a doubt. Millennials want to, I've been here 6 months. Why don't I have my promotion?
And so I think that's the challenge, or perhaps I should ask you, because you're seeing it in your experience. What are the challenges organizations are seeing, and how are they overcoming that type of a mindset?
A couple different ways. One is on the very front side is being really clear about expectations. We're this size of a company, we're on this kind of growth track. And if you prove that you're willing to do the work and do the learning and put forth the effort, this is what a career track could look like. So instead of having the millennial or just any new employee come in and think within 6 months I should be promoted, I think it's incumbent on the organization to give a very realistic timeline of what does that career track look like. Now, bigger companies I'm dealing with are doing more cross-training. So it may not be a promotion per se, but it's moving people within departments so they can gain additional background and additional experience so they become a more well-rounded employee. Also seeing companies that are creating multi-generational workforces or work teams where you can have those millennials help some of those older, could be baby boomers, could even be traditionalists. How do they adapt to this rapidly changing technology world? And then those older people are also able to bring some of that tribal knowledge that they've gained over those 40, 50 years of work to that younger generation of some of the life lessons of this is really how it works. You've read books, but let me tell you, because I've been through it, this is how it really works. So there can be this really great exchange of information and all these groups can learn from one another. The challenge is we tend to have the different groups key in on the differences instead of keying in on the similarities that all employees want. They all want to make more money. They all want to feel part of something. They all want to know what they're doing has some bearing on the success of the company or the organization. And the firms that are better at getting that communication going and getting people to concentrate on the similarities instead of concentrating on the differences.
Excellent. In the book, Hole in One, you have a very short little in parentheses, the front nine. And here, my take was this is the kind of the context of the individual who's struggling within the organization. These are things you just need to do. It's kind of like use the football metaphor where you have to learn how to block and tackle.
Yes.
You need to know how to defend. You need to know how to dribble the ball before you run to the basket, et cetera. All these sports metaphors. So I suspect there's going to be a back nine to this as well. What is the difference between these two books? What are you going to share for us when the back nine comes out?
The back nine is, again, you're right. These are the basics. And when I put down 9 proven steps guaranteed to get you extraordinary results, that's if you do them. But that's the point. A lot of clients I've worked with think they can get to great success without doing those foundational things every day. And the back nine will be more of, let's say, advanced techniques of how do you really galvanize all the members of your team? What does it take to take those foundational things that you've put in place? And now, how do you really make an organization hum? How do you really get everybody rowing with you at the same time, in the same direction, so you can accomplish those things you want to get to, and you have the potential, but you need all of your people to do that. So it's going to be more of a, let's just say, elevated leadership technique book.
Okay. What did you feel after you had the book published? What was the kind of the emotion there, and what were some of the lessons learned now that you've accomplished the writing of this book and it's out there? People like me and are reading it. There's great good sales going on Amazon. Your speaking engagements.
Oh, the biggest takeaway was relief that it was done.
I equated it to birthing a baby, but that was my metaphor.
Well, I've never had that experience, but it was a big relief. It was one of the harder things I've chosen to do in my business career is to take on a challenge like this. And it was a challenge. Like I said earlier, I talk for a living. I don't necessarily write for a living. So I had to learn to take what I communicate and communicate it in a different format. It was besides the relief, is, very proud to have accomplished this and put it down on paper. And the real fun comes from people that have read and said, you know what? I started using this stuff right away. I just finished recently working with a client And I always tend to ask clients at the end, what could I have done better for you? And this client said, you could have given me your book sooner. And I thought, well, okay, I'll take that as a plus. But I mean, really, you do the research, there's 40-some thousand titles out there on Amazon for books with leadership. And if there was one way to do it, then there'd only be one book out there. And I put a little different spin on it, and I made it short and sweet because I've read a number of books on leadership and different business subjects. And many times they just tend to be too long. Mm-hmm. They say the same things over and over. And, it's kind of like if I need 3 chapters to explain a concept, then I'm not so sure that I understand the concept. So I tried to make it a quick read so people could take the points and start working with them. And that was kind of the makeup of the book, of having a little summary at the end of each chapter called a gimme. And for those of the non-golfers in your listening audience, that's when you've hit a putt. It didn't go in, but it's close enough. The opponent knows you're going to make it. So it's a gimme. They give it to you. So those are the gimmes in the book, are just takeaways. What should you be taking away, major point from each chapter? And then right after that is the driving range. What do you need to practice? If you're just reading a book and doing nothing with the information, then the odds of that book helping you or you helping yourself go down dramatically. But if you go to the driving range and try to hone your swing to a better degree, you're probably going to start hitting the ball better. So my thought with the driving range in the book, even put in pages to make your own notes. All right, start working on this stuff right now. If you're serious about becoming a better leader, there's no better time than right now to start doing something about it.
I want to share, I really love the fact that you had that note page at the end of each chapter. In some of the materials that I produce for my LinkedIn workshops, I love the fact that people are taking notes in the moment. Maybe you don't want to make the change, or that you have an insight that I need to make this once I get home and I can think about it and do the work. But I love the fact that you did that, because this tells me a book like this can be consumed and used, and this great material. One last question for you. What was your lesson learned about yourself, having now accomplished the publishing of this book?
I guess the biggest lesson is, I think it comes right back to self-leadership. The whole leadership concept comes down to you first. I don't think you can effectively lead others until you learn how to lead yourself to someplace that's better results, bigger challenge, bigger whatever. And so the fact that I'd never done this before and then took it on, it was like, okay, it's a confidence builder. Not that I'm going to go out and coach people on how to write books, but I'm going to definitely encourage people to accept that challenge and step up and grow. That's the nice thing about being human. Once we stretch, we stay stretched. We don't snap back like rubber bands. So for me, it was a personal growth issue and accomplishment. I'm glad to do it. Looking at the next book, it's going to be a whole lot easier and a whole lot quicker.
Most definitely. You've accomplished it, and these are the things I need to do to get done. Phil, we really appreciate you taking the time to join us on the Success Insight podcast so that our guests and listeners can learn more about you and your work. Where are the best places for them to go to do that?
Well, I have a website, which is www.leapcoaching.com. I'm on LinkedIn, and my book is available on Amazon and Kindle.
Excellent. So we will most definitely provide the backlinks to your website, Leap Coaching, to your LinkedIn profile, and to the book page on Amazon. Phil, once again, congratulations on the publishing of the book. It's a great little book. And for folks, just so you understand, all these podcasts we're doing with authors, I get to read some of these books. And so this was another good one. And even the one we did earlier today, it's an opportunity to continue to grow. So Phil, thank you again for taking that time. And we look forward to hearing about your continued success.
Thank you, Howard. It's been a pleasure to be with you today. And I wish you continued success with your business and your podcasts. Have a great weekend.
There you have it, folks. We've just been chatting with Phil Gafka, business coach, speaker, founder and principal of Leap Coaching, and now the author of his book, Hole-in-One Leadership, 9 Proven Steps Guaranteed to Get You Extraordinary Results. Do check it out. You can learn more about Phil at leapcoaching.com. We'll provide the links back to the book on Amazon and also a link to his LinkedIn profile. So as we say every podcast, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, go out there and have a phenomenal day. We'll see you on the next episode of the Success Insight Podcast. Take care.
Success Insight is a production of Fox Coaching and First Story Strategies. Find us online, successinsightpodcast.com.